happened the summer I came to visit my grandmother. I had just turned 22, had just graduated from university, and was full of excitement about the next chapter of my life. My name is Emily. Grandma was thrilled with my arrival, so much so that she decided to invite her favorite neighbors over for a celebratory dinner. She was glowing with happiness and bustling about with the kind of energy that only grandmothers have. The day was long cleaning, cooking, preparing the house for guests. By evening, I was exhausted to the limit, but the warmth of my family and a few glasses helped me to put a smile on my face. The neighbors arrived just in time. "Good evening, Emily." "Oh, how you've grown." "What a beautiful young woman you have become," said my grandmother's friend, Mrs. Harper, as she entered the house. She hugged me tightly, smelling of lavender perfume. She was followed by her son Dean. Dean Harper still lived with his mother, worked from home, and spent most of his time staring at a computer screen. I remembered him as a shy, awkward guy, a little older than me, who never seemed to have any friends or a girlfriend. It was a lively evening. My grandmother's small house was filled with people talking to each other, laughter echoing off the walls as they exchanged stories. Dean sat silently, nodding occasionally, but mostly staying to the side, scrolling through the news feed on his phone. I enjoyed the evening, but after a while, I felt like I needed a break from the noise. I told my grandmother that I was going to get some fresh air and take a walk to the river that ran behind her property. No sooner had I stepped off the porch than Grandma, ever vigilant, called out to me, "Dean, why don't you take Emily for a walk? She shouldn't be out there alone." I felt my cheeks flush, and I felt a little embarrassed. I wasn't a kid anymore, after all, but I didn't protest. Dean, without saying anything, just stood up and followed me out. It was a warm summer evening, and the soft rustle of the wind in the trees gave the air a soothing mood. I walked ahead, enjoying the brief solitude. But soon, Dean caught up with me at the riverbank. "You run fast," he said, slightly out of breath. "I barely caught up to you." I smiled slightly, but didn't say anything. The river sparkled under the fading evening light, putting me in a peaceful mood. "I remember when you used to come here as a kid," Dean said, breaking the silence with his voice. "You've changed a lot since then. You've grown up and become very beautiful." I looked up at him, startled by his words. He wasn't the shy boy I remembered. There was something different in his tone, something defiant. His eyes lingered on me, and before I knew it, he reached out and gently touched my arm. "I'm serious, Emily." "You're amazing," he said softly as he stepped closer. His hand moved from my arm to my back, a slow, almost hesitant touch. I opened my mouth to respond, maybe to release the sudden tension, but the words never came out. Instead, Dean's lips found mine, and the kiss was both unexpected and exciting. He pulled me into his arms, and before I realized what was happening, we were on the soft grass by the riverbank, embracing each other. The world around us disappeared, leaving only the sound of our breathing and the gentle flow of the river. That night seemed surreal to me, like something out of a dream. I never would have imagined that Dean Harper, the quiet, reserved guy I'd barely noticed all these years, would be the one to make my pulse quicken. And yet, here we were, lost in a moment that seemed to defy logic and reason. We stayed by the river for a while, lying side by side, the weight of what had just happened hanging in the air between us. Eventually, we returned to the house, walking in silence. The evening had taken a turn that neither of us had expected. When we returned, the house was still bustling with life, but we felt like we were in our own bubble, disconnected from the rest of the world. I didn't linger after that. I thanked my grandmother for a wonderful evening, went around the guests, wished them a good night, and retired to my room. As I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, thoughts of what had just happened raced through my mind. Part of me felt like it was an isolated incident, a fleeting moment that would be forgotten in the light of day. But another part of me wondered if this was just the beginning of something I hadn't expected. The next few days were awkward, to say the least. Dean and I avoided each other during the remaining last few days of summer. When we did cross paths, it was as if nothing had happened. We both made our best faces, laughed at jokes, chatted with the rest of the family and neighbors, but there was an unspoken tension between us, a secret we both kept. By the end of the summer, I was ready to come home. The time spent with my grandmother had been everything I'd hoped it would be: peaceful, filled with love and warmth. Still, that night by the river lingered in my mind, a mystery I couldn't quite put my finger on. Dean went back to his normal routine, and by the time I left, it was as if nothing had happened between us. But I knew it was for the best. Sometimes what's left unspoken speaks the loudest. And as I drove away from my grandmother's house, I couldn't help but wonder if that summer night by the river would be the beginning of something more. Only time will tell. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe for more stories like this one.